Welcome everyone. We're just about ready to begin.
Just the terminology, over and
Last week to get some more liquid. Welcome to summer. Where was spring? We're glad you're here for our regional spring workshop. I'm Ira Miller. I'm president of the ATFC this year. And this is one of 3 workshops that we planned, and we're glad to see such a great turnout, and we hope it'll be well worth your while to be here, in addition to the nice little sandwich and drinks that we provided to you. Tonight, the presentation is revenue forecasting and policy. It's going to be with Al Tosti. Al's the chair of the Finance Committee in Arlington, Mass. And joining us in a little bit is going to be Tom Moses, the Executive Administrator of the Town of Hudson. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the ATFC, for those of you who may be new to finance committees. The ATFC is a state organization with the purpose of sharing information and advocacy for town finance committees. Among the things that we do is we host some information on a website, which is mma.org, and you're welcome to go onto the Mass Municipal Association website. It's also a site where you'll see councilors and selectmen and all the different organizations that you find in government. And it's a good place, a good resource. If you have questions that come up, you can get a lot of good information from people who have been on finance committees for a long time and not so long. And all towns operate a little bit differently. So we share that information at that website. Other things that we do is we provide to our members of the organization, the towns who sign on to ATFC, is a finance committee handbook, and we're right in the process of updating our current one, and that should be ready for our annual meeting, which is another thing that we do each year. This year our annual meeting is going to be in Franklin, Massachusetts at the Tri-County Voc-Tech High School, and it'll be October 14th. It's a very expanded workshop where we have one presentation for you tonight, one theme. We'll have one Saturday where we'll have about 7 presentations, and you'll get to pick and choose the ones of interest here. So if you're available, and I expect the information will be forthcoming in the Beacon and also on the website later this summer. I'd like to recognize other members of our organization that are here with us tonight. Mary Jane Strangelo from Bourne, and also the hosts from tonight who put this event together, Brian Boyle from the town of Bolton, and allowed us to use this fabulous facility here, the public library, and also Christine Muir, a finance committee member of
Dunstable,
right. And they're both new folks this year, and we had 4 new members. If you're interested, if you see something that you like tonight and want to get a little bit more interested, feel free to contact any one of us, talk a little bit more, because we're always interested in looking for people who'd like to join our organization. But enough about the organization. Let's get down to probably why you came tonight, about revenue forecasting and the policies. First speaker tonight is Al Tosti. Al is the Finance Committee Chair, as I said, in the town of Arlington for, well, I don't know, how many years? Longer than we can remember. But Al will start us off, and Tom will join us a little later. Al?
Thank you. Now be honest. How many of you here because you want to know about municipal finance? And how many of you here because it's air conditioned and it's a free meal? If you are interested in our board, besides the board members, you can call Denise Baker, who's the young lady in the back there, at the MMA number and ask for her. I think it's extension 105. And she can tell you about the meetings and stuff like that. You know, boards, one of the problems is FinComs tend to turn over a bit, and therefore we need a constant influx of new board members that hopefully then could stay through the process. It's really a great thing, because once you move up to first vice president and president, you meet with the state MMA the first Tuesday, second Tuesday, whatever, of the month, and you meet all the mayors and city councilors and selectmen. Well, you've probably seen enough selectmen, all the people, managers who are involved with it, and then a sort of subgroup of that goes to meet the governor or the lieutenant governor at the local government advisory council. So it's a good way to get involved and really see what's going on that. So let me get into revenue and expenditure forecasting and policies. So what I think I'd like to do is go through the presentation. If you can hold your questions towards the end, and then I'm going to go through it. There's a couple of different ways of approaching this. I think the most important thing, though, that I really want to emphasize, I think a revenue and expenditure plan and all the policies that go into it is an essential component of modern municipal finance. The second component, you'll hear from Tom Moses, is on capital planning. It just really is important to get away from the year by year, well, if I just balance the budget this year, I can get by, for another year, something like that. I had a mayor once in a city that shall remain nameless, negotiated a great contract with the police union. It was 0, 0, and 10. Needless to say, he wasn't up for re-election. So he was out of it. The next poor mayor came in and was facing a 10% increase. So, you got to avoid that kind of stuff. Now, you can do it a couple different ways. You can use a revenue and expenditure forecast to simply project out. In other words, it's a forecasting tool. And I'll get into that in a little bit more. But it can also be a financial plan. It can be part and parcel of a financial plan for the whole town. This is how we do it. This is how we go to town meeting. And we lay it all out. In fact, everybody should have one of these, by the way. If you don't, Denise can bring you one. This is on the last page of the Finance Committee report that goes to town meeting. And I, as part of my presentation as chair, go through this and say, guys, we got big deficits coming up. You cannot increase our spending. I beg of them. And so, actually, usually it works. You present the numbers to people, and it works. I remember one time the manager took it, and he did a whole presentation before all his department heads. And the department heads were so impressed, a couple of them came up to the manager and said, we withdraw our request for increases. Because, they understand. In our committee that I'll get to in a little bit, that sort of helps review all this, we have a union member on it. Our teachers union has a representative on it, so they can see the realities of what's happening, and hopefully help the school committee and ultimately the manager in his negotiations. Suggestions. Okay, so I have 4 suggestions to you. If you're trying to go this way, either towards revenue and expenditure or capital plan, I think the 3 most important words to keep in mind is plagiarize, plagiarize, and plagiarize. All this has been done before, guys. Nobody has to reinvent the wheel. And municipal officials, they love to share stuff. Sure, I'll send you my spreadsheet, or, keep in mind that you could get the spreadsheet and nobody outside of that town knows what the heck is going. But you can take these spreadsheets and then have, attachments, if you know the little bars down the bottom, to all the different subparts of it, and really make that well. But don't feel that you need to do this all yourself. You can you could borrow it. Call your colleagues in another town. Call across the town. You should have a book from the MMA in probably the town clerk's office at least, that has all the numbers of all the towns of this Commonwealth, and all the officials. So, do that. Assign the mechanical task to one office. The last thing you want before town meetings is doing spreadsheets. So come to a conclusion that one office is going to input and do all the number running. Now, I think the logical place to do that, if you have one, is the town manager or town administrator or executive secretary. All you need to do is be modestly competent in Excel, and you'll be able to, they should be able to do it and keep working at it. If you're a really small town, that those officials are part-time sometimes, well, get somebody on your committee who's just, a hotshot Excel guy, and they can work this. They can work this through. But just have one person agree to do the data input. Okay, the third thing that I really urge you to do is get all the major officers and committees on board. And so they all work together. So basically, you need a committee that represents all these different people. Who should be on it? Well, I'll just use our committee is called the Long Range Planning Committee. And it consists of 2 selectmen, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 2 school committee members, the manager and superintendent, chairman of the Capital Budget Committee, and the treasurer, the controller, and the assessor. And everybody should have their input. It's a good approach. All can agree on the basic numbers. See, what you want to do is sort of take the position. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. I guess that's cool. I'm not going to bring that up. The standing committee, this long-range planning committee, this review committee, however you want to do it, it's an open meeting. It's a small room, so we don't get too many people. Actually, we've never had a public person just walk in and sit. Standing committee is a good place to work out the numbers. And so, for example, I'll go through when I go through the actual spreadsheet. But those are all the major groups that you want to go through that can buy into it. Okay, these are the numbers. No, we're being too conservative here. No, we're not. We're being too radical here. So you just need to weigh it and spread it all out, and have everybody go to town meeting with the guy in front. And if everybody grumbles a little bit, you've done a good job. If everybody's happy, something's wrong. Now, this is a lot of work, and you sort of have to design this behind the scenes. So, you'll have, of course, the finance committee saying, you don't need nearly as many teachers as you think you need. And the school committee wants to add 432 teachers' aides or whatever. So, and usually you leave it to somebody to try to sort of negotiate the differences and come up with an agreement. So this is the heart and soul of our financial plan in Montana. And we try to have open minds and listen a lot and try to deal with everybody's concerns on that. So right now, you can take out your handy-dandy sheet. Actually, I was hoping to print this on a bigger page. Of course, for the Finance Committee report, it gets even on a smaller page. But, some people I've seen done 10-year projections. Once you get beyond a certain point, you might as well go to Las Vegas. I mean, it's that. So, first of all, trend analysis. Now, institution I once worked for did a lot of this revenue and expenditure for cities and towns. Which didn't make much money, which is probably we're out of business now, but you know. And what we simply did was use the tax recap sheet. The tax recap sheet is sort of really the heart and soul of municipal budgeting. And if you haven't seen your tax recap sheet, you should go on, don't ask the assessors, that'll take forever. First of all, it's usually like that thick. All you want is the first 4 or 5 pages. You can even go on the Department of Revenue website and you can download your tax recap sheet. And get 5 of them. Get, you know, the last 5. Be good to include, like if you're thinking about doing this for fiscal 19, in other words, at the next town meeting, you get the last 4 years and then you put in this fiscal 18, where the tax rate gets set next fall. Now, you just show it across 5 years. And then what you do is say, okay, the average increase on all these items down here is X. The budgets are going up at X. The pensions are going up at X. Health insurance is going up at Y. Revenues, just, you can literally go down through average 5-year increase, and you know what it is. Then, what you can do is follow that through and project the next 5 years by those percentage increases. Now, it's a little bit more complex than that, but basically that's it. Now, the tax recap sheet, it doesn't break down budgets and stuff, just those total appropriations. So you might have to do a little bit more work with that. You can use your towns, well, no, you want to use a town. Remember, this is a budgeting, this is not an actual. You don't want to use actuals, because actuals depend on circumstances beyond budget control, like snow and ice. So you use budgeting. So, you know, you can go back to the budgets of each of those years, might be on your town website or whatever, break it down a little further, and then project out. And the purpose of this would be, town meeting, if this is what's happened the last 5 years, if the next 5 years are like the last 5 years, as far as these projections, this is where you'll be in 5 years. This is where you'll be next year. So it's basically an educational tool. And what that says is, well, we got to do something about this. We can't just keep going year to year, because it's going to put us in such a hole, you know, 3 years down the line, that, you know, not much we can do about it. Unless your town is very successful in getting overrides. So that's what I call a trend analysis revenue and expenditure forecast. Let me go through this one. We've been doing this since 2005. An override failed. You know, 3, we had to cut like 8% of the budgets. It was really, really tough. So then one of the selectmen, and so we got, let's see, 04 we had to cut, 05 we were able to get through, 06 we were back in a deficit again. Now, a couple things about Arlington. It's a lovely town. The only trouble is we're 94% residential. We have no industrial commercial tax base whatsoever. I mean, we got Mass Ave going up and down the street, but we tax them the same as we tax everybody else. You know, we're not like Andover or Woburn or Waltham, that's right on the major highways with huge industrial parks. I worked for Waltham at one point. You know, all the, from Route 2 down to the Mass Pike on 128, or 95 if you're new. That's all Waltham. Every hotel, every office building, everything is Waltham. Back when I was looking at it, they got $4 million a year in new growth. You know, so you've got a few places like that who just, you know, have more money than they know what to do with. And then there's the rest of us. So let me just go down through this. So start at the top left. Now revenues, state aid. This is probably one of the most difficult you'll have to deal with. It's very unpredictable. For a large part of you that are in regional school districts, most of the Chapter 70, which is the lion's share, will go to the regional school. But of course, your assessment is to somewhat degree based on that. So what we do is we have something called a Budget Revenue Task Force, which we call periodically, invite our reps and senators there and explain our problems, and we go through we need more local aid. And then they go through the same thing they've done for years. Well, the state budget is really in trouble these days, and you'll be lucky to hold what you have. It's a dance, but such is life. School construction aid is going to phase out. That's under the old SBAB. So if you've got some of those will gradually phase out. Local receipts. Okay, well, you can see. So, okay, let me do this once. State aid, we increase Chapter 70 for minimum aid. We increase basically the old lottery general government assistance by a smaller percentage increase. And the governors and the legislature have been pretty good the last couple of years. They've increased it at the growth of state taxes. Of course, if state taxes don't grow, then you got a problem. So we try to keep that a little conservative. School construction aid is that should be exact. Local receipts, we review them, and this is why sometimes we have a separate meeting with certain town officials, the assessor, the controller, the treasurer, and go through all the local receipts. So you should have like a separate spreadsheet that has all those local receipts, and so you're tracking them, just to make sure you stay within line. Now, free cash, you should have a policy for free cash. How do you use free cash? Many people just spend it all. It's certified, it's gone. In the old days, some people spent free cash that wasn't certified, which would get them in a great deal of trouble come November or December. Ours is, there's no magic to ours. We use half. Put half into the budget, roll half. And that way, whether you're going up, you're only spending a part of it, and as the numbers come back down, you're only spending, it just sort of softens going up or going down. Now, we put free cash into the end of the warrant, which says basically the assessors are authorized to utilize free cash in setting the tax rate. So we don't say, some goes there, some goes there. That opens a whole can of worms. We just put it at the end. The assessor basically uses it to reduce the tax rate. Over reserve surplus. This is why the assessor is there. Okay, so the surplus overlay, that's the amount left over from abatement accounts. So you can't take money the assessors don't release. So you're going to have the assessor there. So he's involved. Property tax. Now, probably the key factor, anybody can take the last year's property tax, multiply it times 2.5%, and you're gone. By the way, always keep in mind, it's the last year's levy limit that goes up 2.5%, not the property tax. So if you go up 2% one year, you can go up 3% the next. So it's the levy. Now, the big thing here is new growth. This is a big factor. This is why, Waltham, Woburn, Cambridge, Somerville, Andover have more money than they know what to do with, and people I've talked to here, are in trouble. So we're trying to. We have some condo conversions, which tend to raise money, but it's just not a lot. We also have a lot of tear downs. So if they tear it down, there's nothing there. They build up a new house and sell it. Now we got a new growth. Override stabilization fund. Now, what we've done each of the last 2 times we've gotten a override is we raise more money than we need. So we go to let's take the first one. We need $4 million to balance the budget. We asked for 6. We're going to raise 6. we're going to use $4 million against the budget. We take $2 million and put it in the override stabilization fund. And the next year, and by doing this, we make a promise to the taxpayers, if you give us the override, we're not coming back to you for, well, back in, it was 5 years. Not coming back for 5 years, bother you. And by utilizing money from the override, so for the first like 3 years, we put money into it, and for the next 3 years, we took money out of it. So that's how we've done it. We know we're going to have to over and override. We know our taxpayers have got to step to the plate if they want this kind of services. Okay, so those are your revenue items. Let me stop here. People have any questions? Pretty straightforward. Okay, now we're going into appropriations. So the big one is schools. General education, special education. Don't ask me about the kindergarten fee offset, far too complex. And growth factor. Now, when we passed the first override, as part of the agreement, we limited all school and town expenditure increases to 4%. Nobody could go up more than 4%. It took a few tries to get the school committee on board. And the reason they got on board was because the selectmen said, we're not putting an override on the ballot unless you buy into this. It was several factors: the override amount, the caps, the 4% caps on spending, the 7% cap on health insurance, and if the health insurance went up more than 7%, we'd reduce the 4%. Also, we increased the elderly exemptions and did a whole bunch of other stuff. So it's a whole package. Finance committee bought into it pretty quick. The school committee took 3 different votes, but the selectmen just, like what you do with your kids, broken record. Unless you buy into the whole program in total, we're not putting an override on the ballot. And they did. The selectmen held together. So they got the 4%. Now we get to 2012, and we need another override. All the stabilization money is gone. And so we made a little accommodation. Now, general education could only go up 3.5%, but we would allow special education costs to go up 7%. So we gave the schools a little bit of an accommodation. We said we wouldn't come back for another debt for an override for 3 years. We were a little tighter. Then, however, and we've met that promise, and we're going to meet that promise till 2020, because right at that time, Governor Patrick and the legislature passed legislation allowing cities and towns to join the GIC without negotiating it with the unions. So, the manager called the selectmen's meeting the day the governor signed the legislation, and we were like in it, and it is the gift that keeps on giving. That helped, and a lot of other people did a lot of things. The GIC is no panacea, but it is for some. So that's the reason why we cut our health insurance costs $5 or $6 million, $7 million. It was huge. Now we get to, when we go into school enrollment, now we get into today, and the school enrollment is just, in my towns, skyrocketing. We're adding 200 kids a year into the schools. We're adding additions to schools we built and opened 3 years ago, and we're adding 6 more classrooms to it. It's like the mid-50s for anybody who can remember that back. So we had to make an accommodation for school enrollment, which we did. Okay, then go down, Minuteman, it's our Voc School, town services, and pretty much you could see we have our capital budget, which Tom will go through in a little bit. Pensions. So we're developing policies by negotiating at the Long Range Planning Committee and behind the scenes for all of this stuff. In other words, this is how we handle free cash. This is how we handle local receipts. This is how much we allow the school budget to go up and various elements. This is how much we allow the town budget to go up. We had to sit down with the retirement board. And we negotiate with the retirement board and they capped it at 5.5% growth. They could have thrown us out of the room, but they have a great deal of autonomy. But in this case, you know, they knew about the town, they live in the town, so they worked with us. Insurance has been great as far as not going up. State assessments are state assessments, offset receipts, overlay reserve, so that comes from the assessor. Pretty much whatever they say. Fixed costs are our reserve fund in elections. So we have substantially increased our reserve fund. Court judgments, warrant articles. Biggest warrant article is OPEB. So we allocate a certain amount of money for OPEB every year, and that goes into that. And then you get the override stabilization fund where we deposit money into it. So you can see this year, or for next year, we're only able to deposit about $200,000. So this is what we go to town meeting with. About 3 years ago, somebody got up at town meeting and asked the superintendent, or got up and made a motion to increase the school budget by $300,000. The superintendent got up and said, we really appreciate that very much, we could always use it, but we're really satisfied with the recommendations of the finance committee. You don't see that often, because the school committee and the superintendent were involved from day one, and they know we were flexible both with special education and enrollment costs on that. So this is how we do it. There's no magic to it. You know, every town has sort of got to develop its tweaks itself. There's lots of these out there. Go to town websites, and you'll see a lot of these budgeting types of things. Call your colleagues. Questions? Yes, sir.
My question is this, is that at one time the DOR/DLS had a spreadsheet where they had the long-range plan for 3 years. Why did that disappear? Because that was a tool that we were about to use, and when we came back to it, it's gone. It would have made for a small town, it would have made it a lot easier.
The problem I found with the DOR spreadsheet, this isn't on TV, is it? It used actuals. It integrated all your Schedule A's into it and built it up from then so you could go forward. I find actuals are not good to use, because actuals are going to vary depending on the year. You know, snow and ice obviously is the most recent example. So I think by using the tax recap sheet, your own, which is fairly simple once you go through it, and then fleshing it out with budget information for the schools in the town. And you see here, we don't go through each individual department. We just use the total town expenses, personnel, schools, general education, special ed, growth factor. I mean, it's you've got to keep it simple. You've got to be able to speak to a meeting of a couple hundred people so they can go away understanding it. And so anyway, that's the reason I wasn't gung-ho about it. I think you should use budgets and forget about actuals. Yes?
When you went through who's on this committee, you didn't list finance committee for your long-term, long-range planning committee. Do you have any finance committee members on that long-range planning committee?
Well, actually, 3. The chairman, my vice chairman who deals with the spreadsheets, and my other vice chairman who actually is the chairman of the capital budget committee. So 2 from the FinCom, 1 from the capital budget. So it depends on how you interpret
You
it.
missed it.
Ryan?
Do you know of folks in towns who've done something similar, but in the context of a regional school district?
Well, we have Minuteman. Obviously, that's one. But if you're a smaller town, you know, you're either a, 8 through 12 or a K through 12 region. You just get a bottom line. That might be worthwhile, showing the trend. With a region, you want to be able to show what's happened in the past. You want to be able to show the trend in enrollment. Probably. We just have a line item for Minuteman, which they always violate. Because it's 16 towns, well now it's 10 towns. And the assessments fluctuate by enrollment, and so they're like all over the place. I don't know of any in particular, but I'm sure there's many. To a certain degree, it makes it a little simpler, because you can almost have just one line item there. But if you're going to deal with a region, you better get your other FinComs together. You should have a regional finance committee, to deal with that, and a lot of places do. So you got 3 towns, send 6 finance committee members, 2 from each town, and so you can get on top of it. We tried to do that with Minuteman, but before it had 16 towns, it was just almost impossible to deal with it. And aside from maybe Arlington, Lexington, nobody else cared because their enrollment was so small on that. So, other questions? Yeah.
Did you have to do a lot of voter education? I know you said you had like the schools and all your department heads on board with this, but when you're at town meeting presenting this to the voters who haven't been part of the process, did you have to do a lot of education beforehand to get?
Well, we have a representative town meeting.
Okay.
So generally speaking, probably 3/4 of them are the same year by year.
Okay.
I think several of them have died, but they just, they stuck anyway. So yeah, I mean, so we have the same group, but I would wager, depending on whether it's a school budget night or a non-school budget night, probably a lot of the people who come every time are a lot of similar people, same people. But yeah, I mean, I present this every single time before town meeting, with tears in my eyes, begging them not to increase the budgets. Yeah, it's a lot of education, not only to them, the town meeting members, but to the school committee members, the board of selectmen, the finance, the capital budget, the department heads, the unions. It's a great tool. You need to keep it a little on the conservative side, yet reasonably realistic. Because if they see you're being too conservative, they'll see you're hiding money. So I guess keep in mind that free cash comes from conservatism in your receipts and conservatism in your appropriations. So you can't spend $5 million in free cash unless you figure out a way to get it back. So, or $2 million or $1 million or whatever it is. So you got to balance that. That's a balance. Don't worry, the schools will be pushing you to be less conservative. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Just the
Okay.
term,
Last one.
Okay, last one.
the term override stabilization fund, that's probably founded because you have a representative town meeting. The people that show up there understand when the word override gets thrown into their budget.
Yeah.
There's a purpose, and I think you went into that, but do they have a tough time explaining that to Joe Citizen when they get back out into the hinterland?
Well, we usually don't go back out until it's gone.
Yeah.
So we don't have to explain anything. You just do the best you can. Because remember, it's not just you, it's all the other elected and appointed officials who can go out and explain it. So the more people know, and we've been doing this for, 12 years with this plan. So it's fairly well known.
Well, the composition of your town would respond if you said, well, you're just going to have to do away with these services. And if
But
there's
not
that
my
sort of
service.
feeling, not you, how much you get paid?
I get $650 a year.
You do.
I am the lowest paid chief financial officer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, our finance committee gets paid a small stipend. Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks very much. I'm going to take like a 2 or 3 minute break. The restrooms are right outside the doorway. We're going to set up Tom Moses, and you have 2 to 3 minutes, and we'll get right back to Park City. All right, we're ready for Park tonight. But before we get started with Tom Moses, Executive Administrator Munson, I was remiss in the introduction. Nothing at all happens at ATFC without Denise Baker. The least of which is providing and setting up for this wonderful meal that we have tonight. So thank you, Denise, for everything you do for all of us. And I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. First of all, everybody knows Al. Probably nobody or close to nobody knows me. So, a quick introduction. I was born, no. I came from the private sector a long time ago. I started out as assistant finance director in the city of Cambridge. Left Cambridge to become CFO in Gloucester. Surprisingly, from there I went to a small town to be finance director at Town of Groveland. In the interim, I became a selectman in the town of Raleigh. Eventually became assistant city manager, CFO in Lowell, and have been in Hudson for about 3 years. So, and I thank Al for going first for 2 reasons. I'm going to refer to all you talked about because it's an important part of the capital planning, and number 2, I was late. So, so what I'm going to talk about is what is a capital plan, the definition of capital, funding sources, the process, prioritization, and give you some references for some plans of communities of different sizes. First of all, I want to get a feel for who I'm talking to. So how many people here are from towns that are under 5,000? Okay. And 5 to 15? Okay, and anybody over 15? Okay, all right, so pretty good mix. All right, well, that's important. All right, what is a capital plan? It's similar to a 5-year forecast because you're planning for appropriations you need to make out in the future. That's really the heart of the plan. It's a little different because the 5-year forecast and the operating plan, the operating expenses, those are going to be mandatory. Everything you do in a capital plan is optional. Everything is optional. There's no reason to build a school next year or 5 years from now, and there's no reason to replace that dump truck. But you want it to integrate with that 5-year forecast. He had a line in his for the capital plan. That is really critical because if you're not doing that, then you're not forecasting your ability to fund the plan. The plan is made up of a lot of information, text, spreadsheets, tables, and charts. Most importantly, the heart of it is going to be a spreadsheet, just like the 5-year forecast. But most of you in town form of government, without representative town meeting, are going to at some point, either at town meeting or before town meeting, try to explain to everybody what is in your capital plan. And text is the way you do it. You write it up, you try and make sense. You will justify your prioritization, which we'll talk later. And we'll show through pictures sometimes some of the equipment you're going to replace. A picture tells 1,000 words. You see some of that. And even charts. So you're going to outline the specific purchases and when they'll occur. Just like the 5-year plan, it is malleable. You may decide this year that in 2 years you're going to need an addition on a school. And then enrollment drops. Well, you're going to push that out in the capital plan. You may not drop it all together. You may say that's a temporary enrollment decline. We're going to need it, so you push it out to 5 years from then. So it's flexible. So you want the timelines, and it will outline funding sources, and we'll talk a little bit more specifically about what those funding sources are. And I included a subset here. one of the common denominators for all of us is we have a fleet. And if you're big enough, the fleet repurchases can be part of your operating budget. If you know that if you're a big community with a budget of $100 million and you know you're spending $1 million on fleet replacement every year, well, you just throw the $1 million in your operating budget and pay for it out of that. But for most of us, we have smaller fleets and we replace vehicles less frequently. And the object is not to let them run into the ground, although your finance committees, and sometimes you like to do that. But us operations people, that vehicle's going to be off the road. So we try and set everything up on a cycle. You may have diesel vehicles that last 10, 15 years. You may have gas vehicles that you want no more than 10 years. But you don't want to replace them too soon. So, spreadsheet, just like Arlington, this is Hudson's plan, and it's separated into a couple of pieces, and we'll talk about it later. These are funding sources. This is pay-as-you-go capital from here up. They tend to be smaller items. Smaller is relative, but I know. We try and make the cutoff somewhere around 300, 350,000. And beyond that, we may borrow to fund those. So these tend to be vehicles up at the top for DPW, smaller vehicles in the fire department, library, police. We have school. We have some more detail behind this for all of these, but much more detail for schools. And here are what we plan to borrow in this particular year. Town meeting approved $1.3 million to borrow for a fire pumper, town hall renovations, and this is our high school track and field area. And this is kind of a line that could be folded into the budget. Police cruisers, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. See small inflation factors along the way. Now, this is what everybody wants at this point in the future. We actually funded this. These are wish lists. I don't know that they're all going to get funded, but you want them on the radar screen. You want the town to know that this is a priority of the departments. And part of the alchemy here is using the 5-year forecast and the revenue forecast in particular to figure out what you can afford to pay for. This is taken from Ipswich. Now they list it. They list the item, the year. They also have some spreadsheets and other text explaining everything, but it's not one size fits all. It's what's good for your community and how you want to communicate that. That's important. This is our capital request form. So each one of those individual items needs to be justified. And this is a replacement for one of the pumpers. This came in this year. You can see a general justification: purchase for the replacement of a 1995 pumper, useful life 20 years, price, and your department heads will generally do the research to know what the price is, why it's being replaced. Additional information, we have some more that I will show you here. This is, again, from our capital plan showing the track replacements. Pictures tell a lot, and sometimes you need to supplement it with some words so everyone knows what they're looking at. But you can go to town meeting and say, high school track's in terrible condition, we need to replace it. And some folks stand up and say, I don't have any kids in school, we don't need a track team. It's reading, writing, arithmetic. Then you show them a hole in the track and they say somebody's going to get hurt there, they're going to trip, they're going to sue the town, we're going to pay a lot of money. And people start to say, how much do you need? So the pictures really do help. I use a vehicle inventory. This is more of a communication in the capital plan, and this is just one department. But I like to show all the vehicles that the town has because it's usually a hot button. Everybody sees, the fire chief go around in a brand new $50,000 Explorer or Expedition. Why did that happen? Well, it helps to have the year, make, model, mileage, and it's updated every year. We don't put unmarked vehicles or anything like that. But we do list police, fire, DPW, and then the smattering of other vehicles that we have. This is something I did in Lowell. It ties in with the long-range plan. This is what we adopted as a target age for our fleet. Now in Lowell, there are a lot of vehicles, and so a bunch are going to be older, a bunch are going to be younger. But you don't want a target age too low, because that means that down the road, they're all going to need replacement all at once. You don't want it too high, because that means your vehicles are in lousy shape, probably. So you set this target that's right in the middle. This is kind of a blend between cars, pickup trucks, gas vehicles, which we probably had somewhere in the 3 to 4 average, and then diesel vehicles that were somewhat higher. So that's the average. And what this was important as we showed out into the future years how we were going to replace vehicles. It showed how we were going to drop the average age and maintain it. That gets buy-in to your vehicles, which is, you know, a significant part in most communities' capital plan. So, what is capital? What do you want to put on the capital plan? It's generally not recurring. By recurring, I mean every year. There's some measure of value on the asset. An example down here, $25,000. Other than that, you probably want to stick it into some expense line in your budget. For smaller communities, $25,000 may not be realistic, maybe more like $5,000. You want to measure the useful life. So in our own capital plan, and it helps to have a policy, we won't include anything in the capital plan that doesn't have a life of at least 5 years. It can be physical or conceptual. One of the items on our capital plan was an engineering study of South Street. South Street is in our downtown, and it's kind of isolated visually from Main Street, which is doing really well. And what we want to do is put some concepts together to help businesses flourish on South Street and bring it visually into our downtown. So that's kind of what you put in a capital plan. I would not put anything in a capital plan that is going to wear out in 1 or 2 years, or even 3 years, and inexpensive items. Funding sources. Well, first of all, you have to separate your funds. Some of you may have enterprise funds. Their capital plans need to be standalone. We don't have any in Hudson. It's a bit unusual for a town our size. But you want the enterprise funds to stand alone because if you have water or sewer enterprise funds, you want rates to cover both your operating expenses, your debt service, your prorated benefits, but you also want it to include your capital plan. The rates should support that. And then in the general fund, obviously it's funded by taxation, but you have a few options. You also have options in enterprise funds. Pay-as-you-go capital. Some towns, cities and towns may have the luxury of funding out of their tax rate. We generally take what we can and fund it out of free cash. And like Arlington, we don't spend all of our free cash. We take the longer items, especially items that can be borrowed for 20 years and you expect it to last for 20 years. Building improvements, water and sewer infrastructure, almost always those will be bonded and spread out. You have sometimes stabilization funds. There are towns out there who specifically have capital stabilization funds. Does Arlington do that?
Not specifically for capital.
I know Chelmsford does. They actually set aside money in a stabilization fund, draw it down periodically, and replenish it out of free cash. And they try and maintain a source of funding there. When something's really big, when you're putting up a school or a new building, we're putting up a new police station, you can do a capital exclusion, or if you're doing bonding, a debt exclusion. That way it doesn't impact your tax rate. You know all about that. We're building our police station, which is maybe a week or two away from completion, with a debt exclusion. Now, process. This is where it can get dicey. I'm not a real fan of separate capital committees because I think it's really important to tie in with the rest of the financial management of the town. If you're a small community, I would be advocating for the finance committee to take that role because the finance committee has a better understanding of the operating budget, the forecast of the revenues and expenditures, and this is going to have to fit into them. If you have a standalone committee who knows all about the town buildings and knows all about which vehicles are good and bad, you've got to educate them about how this is going to fit in, and that can be an element of that. Now that said, a lot of communities do it that way. There are some communities that do it without any committee. Hudson is one, but you don't do it alone. I do it with staff. I have 2 other people, the 3 of us, go through the capital plan, and it's our finance director who never puts in a capital project, so she can be perfectly honest about her assessment, and our community development director, who's supposed to have a good understanding about the community, who may sometimes put in a capital request, but he will never score his own. And I'll get to the scoring in a second. So depending on how you develop, your roles are going to be advisory in a typical capital committee. We advise whoever is putting together the budget for this year that you purchase this capital, but we may not be advising you on how you're going to pay for it. It could be support in that you're saying, okay, I want you to help me put the capital plan together, can help me integrate it into the budget and five-year plan. Or they may take the lead. They may do it all. Again, it's not one size fits all. I talked about the available funding. That's key. That's the revenue piece to your plan. And then the heart of the matter is the prioritization. You're going to get requests, some of which are crazy. And you're going to get requests that you know you need. And you have to have some objective way to rank them and communicate that ranking. So we developed a scale system. You can do it however you want. This is how we do it. We take each one of those submissions and we rank them using these criteria. This happens to be a spreadsheet. These are drop-down. There are a set of options that you can choose from. You can add your own. So for effect on public safety, it can vastly improve. It can improve slightly. It has no effect. It will detract from public health and safety. And each of those drop-downs is associated with a number. So it's given a points or score. And then we weight each of the criteria. We think, for us, that the effect on public health and safety is most important, so we're going to weight that score more. And is it a prerequisite for a future project? Well, that's less important, so we're not going to weight that as much. And then the extension here is 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. Total them up. This project gets 54 points. All three of us who are putting the capital plan together, or your capital committee or your finance committee, every individual member could do the same. You take an average, and now you have a ranking of all your, instead of taking all the submissions and throwing them down the stairs and the heaviest one gets the funding, now you have an objective way to rank these, especially when somebody says, you always put the schools ahead of DPW. DPW gets the short end of the stick. Well, now you're being objective. And you can create any kind of criteria that you want, whatever is important for your community. But this has been an incredible tool. It's the way that we tell the difference between, in our capital plan this year, the bricks that were falling off of the chimney on the school administration building, why that was more important than air conditioning in one of the schools. So, there are examples, and for anyone who doesn't want to write this down or take a picture of it, I can hand out my card and email this to you, so you can just click on these links. But these are links to good capital plans from Arlington, which is kind of a big town, Lowell, which is a big city, and Upton, which is more like probably most people here. But those are resources. And I can answer any questions there.
So, can we get your slides?
Yeah, sure. I'll send them to you. I have a bunch of cards that I need to give out, so yes.
What's the annual budget for it?
It's about 80 million.
And debt, you said about 350 per year?
No, that's kind of the minimum size we borrow. Our debt services each year is about $7.5 million. A lot of it is supported by the water and sewer rates. So not a lot is tax supported.
I had a question. Who is involved in making that list with the criteria list?
A lot of the people enrolled that I work with, I brought it with me from
Yeah.
Old Gadsden.
So
I changed
just
it
the
a
finance
little.
committee, or was it?
No, there is no finance committee in a city like Lowell.
Okay.
It's all administration, so it was a combination of the city manager, me, DPW director, police fire chief, data analyst, that's kind of a luxury position, and what else was involved? Community development director.
How would you recommend this whole thing be implemented in terms of ranking for the regional school district? And then how do you set the table for collaborative, approach to the community?
Well, that's really hard because when you're in a regional school district, you're not ranking your projects against your projects. You're essentially trying to mimic the relationship of your projects against another town's needs. And I don't think the capital planning process works very well on a regional basis. I would more encourage your regional school system to develop a capital plan itself and then commit that to the finance committees for analysis on how you can fund it, and then communicate to them, go back and say, yeah, it looks like the next 3 years we can pay for this, or you're going to have to push for debt exclusion or an override to do it, because you're biting off more than you can chew to try and prioritize somebody else's needs.
Tom, for a town that's less than 5,000, for instance, sometimes, I'm sure you know in your experience, you have, departments that are really very small and departments that are quite large, and they're just really hard to define a capital threshold dollar value. Something I've been toiling with for a little while. 10,000 should be 5,000.
Right.
I'm going to really make the DPW director crazy if it's 5,000, but at the same time, I'm not going to capture anything in the cemetery department that's really small if it's 25,000.
Yeah.
Do you have any guidance on what what's the lowest capital threshold you've seen in a smaller community, or?
Well, I would look at the expense line items in the budget, and if your medium-sized departments, not police, fire, or DPW, but something like a library or a council on aging, if their budgets, the annual expenses are in a $10,000 range, then I'd maybe look at half the size of their expenses, kind of as a rule of thumb. I would never go above their annual expenses, because if somebody has $10,000 a year in expenses and they need something $9,000, and you say, hey, you've got to find it out of your budget. It's not going to happen. So that's how you do it. Yes?
Could you back one slide to the criteria slide?
Sure. That one?
Yeah. So I noticed that one line item is the term strong support. So you're rating the support that's already there for...
You're really just reading town meeting at that point. And most of it, there's usually a lot of support for schools, for road projects, but each community is different, and you may have real hot button issues. If here's a beautiful library, but if the library were falling apart, and a lot of people knew that, and you wanted to put renovations to the library in your capital plan, and you knew there was going to be a lot of support for that, you'd want to rank that, because it's reflective of the priorities that the community itself places on it, not just you as preparer of the capital plan.
And the second one, on the very top, effect on, let's say, effect on public safety, vastly improved. How do you, how do you handle something that
Well,
you
this
know
is-
is public safety is going to fall lower?
This is why you have a couple of people do it and you average it, because my opinion is no better than anybody else's, and I may be wrong. Generally, this is my rating, actually. You see my name on it, and we put all our names on it. Anything, when you're talking about a fire alarm in an elementary school, and the system is failing, yeah, that's going to vastly improve the safety.
But that could be a high number on that line item, but if the rest of them are low, you end up with a total score that's lower.
You'd be surprised at how well it evens out. Most of our projects were in the 60 to 30 range. It really averages out. And the surprising thing is that there's not a whole lot of difference in rating. There is some. As we rated our projects, I think each of us had one that fit within the budget for the capital plan each year, or that year. They got dropped out. So one of mine got dropped out, one of our finance directors got dropped out, one of our community development got dropped out. So, I'm kind of a egalitarian. I don't care if mine gets dropped out as long as it makes sense.
Any other questions? I'll give you one more shot at Al. Al's still hanging around.
I have one request, because there's only a couple of us to do the work, but when you finish, Tom and I will be able to hang around for a few minutes if you'd like to ask questions. But in payment, could everybody just sort of bring their chairs up to the front there and stack them, it will help. And please, take food home.
And one other thing, there are trash receptacles at on each wall. So if you could please clear the tables, because we are responsible if we ever want to come back here. Let's thank our speakers. Thank Denise for the letter, and also